Well, I want to do the masking of these parrots now. So I'm cutting out some masking paper, which should be low tack and should stick on. And I've just tried one type without trying it on a drawing first, and it took away the surface of the paper completely. It wouldn't come off properly, so I wasn't at all happy with that purchase. I've got some old stuff here that seems to come off more easily, so I'm going to try this. And I should be able to peel this off onto here and then cut around it, and later I'll be able to peel off the outside pieces and later the inside pieces when I've painted completely over it. Let's see if that works. It should still come away fairly easily, whereas the previous one that I just brought, which I won't mention the name of, but it didn't, and it tore away the paper surface, which is totally not what I need. So now what I've got to do is take my craft knife or scalpel, just go through this, cutting through the film, just through into the paper, if I do it correctly. And that should allow me to lift the film off right up to the cut, or it should. We'll see in a moment, won't we? And of course in the evening I should be able to do the same. So hopefully this bit of tape that I've cut here will come away now. That's it. Yes, it is there, good. So that seems to be working alright, good. Okay, so I'll cut around the rest now. And yes, it comes away there, okay, and down. Take off the whole of that. Lift off that, there. That's leaving that covered in the cellophane now. Make sure it's stuck well down below the blisters to let the water liquid into the underneath. All of that is covered. The other one was a light blue, which is quite useful because you could see where you've gone. But it was just so tacky it wasn't possible to get it off afterwards. Hopefully this one will be. Right, well let's remove the outside of the masks so we can just paint straight over that lot, I hope, and I'll peel up afterwards for the detail. Full experiment, but it should work. When we were there, for the time we had, nice and bright, nice and clear. This was the sponge rollers again, and using slabs of paint very loosely. I know that some of you wanted to do the sea, so you can see that very loose way of working. So what we're doing there is, if we start loose, we can finish tight. You can't start tight and go loose, it's impossible. So I start fairly loose within a fairly tight drawing. You can see how tight that drawing is there. The drawing foundation needs to be fairly good, because I find, especially if you're a beginner, it's much harder to work with in a loose or bad drawing and go loose, because you enhance all the bad things and it just goes awful. So you're better to try and get the drawing, even the basics of the drawing, fairly good with acrylic inks, which are very, very bright and vibrant, and then going over and cutting in and going around with the pastels. So if we take an example of that, way back from then, but it's under the light, you see it better. That's acrylic inks, very, very loosely wet into wet, and then building up with the pastels. This is the same. This was a demonstration, well, this was a little day lesson with somebody in France in my little cottage there. But you can see the acrylic inks with all the reds going on here back, and then gradually picking things out. As a difference to that, quite different, although I'm painting wetting to wet with the inks, that's just a pure watercolour. So just wetting with watercolour, and the feel is quite different. You're not quite getting that same vibrance. But as I say, a little bit of tonight is touch and go. I know what should happen in my head. I know what should happen logically, but if it doesn't, we'll see. Anything can go wrong, but it's part of the fun. Because, as I say, you cannot have an adventure without risk, can you? Because it's not an adventure. I want to wet the paper first, and I could use a bigger hake if I wanted. But, let's see now. yeah, when it's dry then the acrylic ink gives a key even on a smooth paper. I have stretched it for that obvious reason that I'm going to totally soak it. It's not totally necessary, and if you use a heavier paper, a 300 or whatever. And I was saying about texture that if I wanted to do a snow scene and I was using watercolour and pastels, then I probably would have used a knot paper or something with a little bit of texture to colours these. Now I can go as dark as I like because I can put my dark colours in. So I'm just going to do some light colours at first here. A bit of orange and greens going on. I want to keep this wet, I mustn't let this get dry. So I've got to keep spraying. You see how lovely and luminous these colours are. So standard watercolour. Now I have had one or two awkward things with this already because I was trying out a masking medium earlier on, and it's got a name like something erotic at the airport when you're searched, frisk it. And I tried a cheaper one and it stuck to the paper, and some of this paper you'll find later is raising a bit because damp stuff wouldn't come off, and I tried two different ones first of all and they would not come off, so you've got to be careful which one you get. The one I finished up with is the original brisket, that's this one, and it's low tack, and that's what I was after. So if you're going to do this technique, or try it out, it's very, very useful, especially if you don't want to do large areas of masking fluid or anything, then this is the stuff to use. Easy to just tack on and then cut out with a craft knife. And it's like the jigsaw method I told you about when using acrylics. If you paint with this is my personal one for new students, my jigsaw method. It doesn't matter what you're painting, whether it's horses, dogs, seagulls, doesn't matter how complicated it is, figures, once you've got that basic drawing done, it's the right shapes. So if we place in painting like a jigsaw, you've got to be bold, you've got to be brave to do it. You know, you can't sort of pussyfoot with this. But as long as you realise that you can't go far wrong because you can go back over it. Gradually tighten up. Again, you can see my being insistent about these marks, and I want the effect of palms here. I've got to make sure that those, although I can do it with the pastel later, it doesn't matter so much. And I can glaze with the inks as well, of course, which I'm doing now. I can put one colour over another. You see hard edges coming here, and it's just starting to dry out, so I've got to get up here and hit that. But I don't want it so wet that what I'm doing is to just disappear. I'm using a turquoise now. Gradually building up these lights too. And I love these oval mops, this Pro Art oval mop. You can get them in large, medium and small. This is actually a large one, but they're so lovely for watercolour because if I use them this way I can use them thinly, or if I want to use them more thickly I can just plod on like that. The only thing is, it's like the very textural ones I used to do. They aren't cheap, the acrylic inks, they're about £4 or £5 a jar, I think. But they do go quite a long way, and you can also draw with the lid, because the lids have an eyedropper in pineapple-like crisscrossing on the texturing on here. I could use a rake brush for this now if I wanted to. I'm going to use the rake a little bit later, deliberately for you. It's a lovely way to work, isn't it? Being loose and free and easier for you on the flat, but equally, you know, it's quite fun this way. Again, let's keep it just wet enough, not too much that it's sliding down here. And the thing will gradually appear before your very eyes. Whereas we can, with the opposites in the colour circle, the complementary colours. So I'm gradually working darker now, putting the darks over the light. So warm next to cool, light next to dark, and rough next to smooth will help us enhance. And just one colour can make a difference, as Constable well knew, because if you look in his landscapes, I beg your pardon if I said it before in my demos for you, but if you look in his landscapes, there's nearly always a little red figure somewhere, and we know why that is, because that red figure is the opposite in the colour circle to the green, so therefore it'll make the greens look brighter. And so that one little figure can totally change and make the other colour stronger. I don't use white and black until the very end if I need to at all, because you can't go whiter than white and you can't go blacker than black. This is Purple Lake now, or deep purple. It's a wonderful colour. You see I'm gradually working up the warms against the cools and from the light to the dark. So, you know, some people say, oh, I want to do watercolour, or I'm sure you watercolourists will enjoy this, because it's just the watercolour technique, isn't it? And we could be doing this with watercolour. I mean, when I first started off years ago, I was using watercolour before I went on to the inks. How are we doing? I've got 20 minutes left before break. I'm hoping to try and get this underpainting done so that I can start on the pastels immediately after or during your tea break, so we can really get the idea of brush skills. It's red going a bit more, a bit of orange into there maybe. Right, you can see I can tint colours in. I can start my mid-tones and my lighter colours. I've just put two little bits of white there just to give you an idea. If I go on to cream, it's a very light cream on there. So I can put light over dark now, and I can put dark over light, or whatever I prefer. Now you can imagine now if I was doing a flower scene, I could start cutting in with these lovely highlights and things, can't I? As you saw down there. And I'm going to use some brushwork with this as well in a minute. It's not just going to be this. I can blend, and I can always use water as well to come back and drag them out. I'm going to do that with some darks in a moment just to show you how that will work. You can grind the pastel and you can splatter pastel over it with water or whatever else. There's so many ways you can work, but to say do start to explore. Don't be stuck in one way of working. Have fun. I usually have my pastels with the paper taken off. But if I have to do a film, then obviously I've got to have one box with the numbers on, so I can say I'm now using number so-and-so, so the Unison people can then see what I'm doing. So it's coming out as I sort of expected it to. As I say, I haven't done one quite like this before, so it's all good fun, and I'm totally, thoroughly enjoying it. But just make sure it looks like something in the end for you guys. But and putting that stronger yellow on is going to make the lighter yellow, the creams, seem lighter. So I've got to play one colour and one tone against another as I go on with this. Lovely. Start to bring the sun, just starting on the sunshine now. I'm just starting to use much stronger, more vibrant colours, and I'm going to use some much darker ones yet to parallel price, maybe, but it still didn't quite work out. Oh, people will try on. Right, now, let's take my life in my hands, and let's see if we can get this paper off. That's what we need to do, is share ideas all the time, that's right. So if I want a little bit of splatter going on here, there's so many ways of splattering, but this way is quite good. It tends to put more on you than the... And I talked about the cone brush, but I'm going to use that in a minute on the Parrot. But that lovely cone brush, for instance, if I wanted I wanted a bit more texturing going on here. I can use that brush, a bit more water. Because the pastel is quite dry now, you see how that's can be lovely little fine lines and things like that with the comb. And for hair on animals, for hair on hares, you can imagine what that can do with the smaller and larger ones, and the very fine ones, the combs, not the rakes, you can get wonderful. Or we can dot and dash with it. So for grasses and stuff, it's lovely, just to give you an idea. And I could then start doing that with the edge of the parrot's tail or wings, which I'm going to do with the pastel in just a moment. There we go.
Oh gosh, it's clear as it comes on now. I'll come across that. Coming off like the cellophane, isn't it?
It's torn slightly just there, but that's no worry because I can soon touch it up. But that's where it's torn earlier, so I already know that had it happened. But there you are. See, that's the frisket. Quite useful, and you can probably see more uses for yourself now. Rather, if you want to use masking fluid, of course, and it's a huge area, well, and you can reuse it. I mean, you know, the pieces I cut off there earlier are all still here on the roll.
So how is it supplied? Is it on a roll then?
Yeah.
Sort of like a flat cellophane almost, sticky.
It comes on a roll like that with the backing. So you can peel it off the back. You can either cut it out and then stick it straight on as a stencil from the whole thing, peel it off. But don't forget you're going in reverse then. I made that mistake earlier.
Can I pass this around?
That's called frisket.
Some of the brushes might be oils. I think it was
Now, as with watercolour, sometimes we can get a brighter colour by dropping one colour into another than we can by mixing them. So in this case, I'm not going to get a very bright red. What I can try and do to get that bright red is to go on with my my lighter colour first, and then drop in the red afterwards. So if I want to mix an orange, I can put the yellow first and drop the red into it, rather than try and mix it, which would kill it. So if I take I'm dropping some magenta, some very light magenta, into this orange now, to really try and get the vibrance. You see how fresh that is? And I'm going to put some red into it in just a minute. I want one colour working against another here. Into that, the deeper red. Right, I know you're short on time now, so that's what I wanted to get to. You can now see how those plain colours will come out. All I've got to do at the end, when I've done all of that on this parrot, is go back in with the pastels and just bring out the highlights of the yellow and the darks. And for the dark here, for instance, I can put some pastel on it and use the brush to get the details around it, in the same way as I could use the rake brush even on here, just to get the feeling of the feathers going on across there. Yeah. Will that do you tonight then?
Yes.
I tried to get it finished. I would like to go further, but you've got the basics. And what I'll do is I'll put this film up on YouTube later and send you the link, so you can see the actual picture finished. But tonight was just to show you that technique of fun.
Well, I'd like, on behalf of Driffield Art Group, to thank Peter. It's a very nice, exotic, hot, warm picture on a horrible, cold January day. And I don't do acrylics, but I can do this, and I'm sure a lot of you will be probably going away and experimenting with your backgrounds and salvaging pictures that you've done that you've not happy with, and going back into
with the
them
pastels.
with pastels.
Yeah. So you can use watercolour with the pastels as well, remember, so it's just the same, but you make your watercolours much stronger when you paint them. If you don't use pastels over the top, that's the only thing.
The pastels do emerge though. I do know what you mean about pictures. Don't get too rigid and just put it on, and then
start
they just
loose,
suddenly come out.
Finish tight, and keep that jigsaw method going on. Right colours, right shapes. It just appears, as you can see here.
Yeah, and one of your mottos is explore. So I'm going to
take risks.
Take risks. So I'd like you all to
Well, I got this far with the one from Driffield Art Society the other day. pleased to get that far really. It's quite involved, and I got so carried away with it I wasn't really watching the time, because normally I would have gone on to these parts a bit further to show them how far it would go. So I just managed to get some of the colours in of the parrots, and that's what I'm going to carry on with now. I'm going to now do the rest of the parrots with the inks, and then just finish off with the pastels. I'm just finishing off now with some magenta, or the nearest I can get to magenta with Unisons, and that'll warm these worms up. Instead of doing warm and warm and warm, we do the opposite to bring the watercolour out. And that should just about do this picture, I think. Bit of luck there. Again, definitely into these blues, bring the blues out as well. I think that's just about there, you know. If we do it there, we might have to come down here and do it all as well. Already got the beds in there really, so not too bad. I think I'm going to call that finished, you know. Got a little tire up here maybe. There we go. Well, I'm going to call it finished at that.